Grant was breathing heavily after escaping the tree folk. The groan of their wooden bodies filled the forest behind him. Yet the merchant and him were putting them far behind. Good. That was a close encounter for them. They were lucky to still be moving. He had worked with those goons for years, yeah. They had gotten to have a few tight spots together. He would miss them. When Grant got back to town, he'd have to raise a drink to those buffoons. Now, where was that horse and cart? Getting the merchant and his goods to the destination was his job, and he would be a garbage bodyguard if he lost his boss's merchandise. His eyes kept darting between the trees. Light streamed in from above as the trees thinned out. They were smaller and much younger than those that surrounded them before. The ground around them was filled with small bushes and grass. It almost felt like some sort of garden. The only thing marring the beauty was two thin rows of trampled grass. At the end of them was the merchant's cart. The horse had calmed down and was munching on the grass. Its ears continued to twitch about with every sound of the forest. The two men sighed a breath of relief as they made their way to the beast. Neighing, the horse rubbed its nose against its master. But the mercenary was still on guard. He'd been doing this for decades, and had learned to never drop his guard. "We should get moving," Grant insisted. The two men climbed up to their seats and set off on the slow pace once more. The forest continued to thin as they came upon a large open glade. Grant leaned back a bit to soak up the sunlight. A gentle thump drew his gaze. Sitting near the edge of the glade was a group of elves working to fell a towering tree. Its branches were empty of all leaves, despite the time of the year. Several other trees were the same around them. The elves waved the two humans over. "Greetings. What business do two humans have in our forest?" the elves questioned. "I was transporting goods. Your capital of Birchfort was one of my stops. I was going to speak with Gilia." "Ah, I see. We shall send word of your approach. Be on your guard. The forest has grown wild and is dangerous." "Yes, we have already found that out. Thank you." The merchant bowed before setting the horse off once more. As they rolled forward, Grant watched the elves at work. It was so strange to see. He had always thought of the elves as preservers of nature. And here they were, cutting down a tree. His musings were pulled ahead as the smell of smoke drew his attention. It was not far. He could see the flames dancing through the trees and the smoke rising far above them. He wanted to turn back or rush forward, anything but a slow trudge onward. He looked to the merchant, who seemed calm. That somehow assured the mercenary's nerves enough for him to ride forward calmly. Further along the road, he found a group of elves setting trees aflame. "Hello, and welcome back to Mythical Philology. I'm your guide, Jason the Orgos. You, like the mercenary, are probably wondering what the elves are doing here. The forests of the elves are eternal, but this is not due to simple luck. No. To preserve such a forest requires care. What do I mean? Well, stay for a bit and listen, aspiring adventurer. If you spent much time in the wilds, you may have noticed a few things, aspiring adventurer. You notice that most forests are patchworks. Some areas will have one type of tree while others have another. Past that, you'll notice a mixture of grass and shrublands as well. What's going on? What we have here is called ecological succession. There is a pattern of one plant replacing another. This process begins after the environment is destroyed. Usually this is something like a wildfire, an avalanche, or an abandoned city. It also works when a new island cools after breaching from the ocean. The first to appear are the lichens, the pioneers of the plant world, as they settle on any surface, be it stone, sand, or even glaciers. They prepare the ground for the next wave. Grass will spread over the area before shrubs and bushes will break forth. Finally, trees will spring out. First one species and then another. This is not a quick process. It can take 500 years for some species of trees to pass to another. And this full process can take millennia to complete. That is assuming that the land isn't destroyed by natural disasters, like I discussed earlier. Once the top species of tree is reached, a forest can last for thousands of years if taken care of. But what does that mean? Does that mean just doing nothing and letting the forest grow? As odd as it sounds, the answer is no. Tell me, adventurer, on your last outing into the woods, how was it to walk? Was it easy? Or was it covered in undergrowth, bushes and weeds that have sprung up in the light of early spring, only to be overshadowed as the trees' branches filled it? These plants will grow dry in the summer heat with little light and are competing with the water from the trees with their wider root base. A place where dead pine needles fall and rest is the perfect kindling for a forest fire. Is this a good thing, or is it a bad thing? I'm sure you'll probably think it is a disaster, that the forest would burn down and countless animals would die. Truth be told, that doesn't happen as often as you think. In the Yellowstone fires, only a few animals actually died. Most were able to escape. Tell me, have you ever heard of the giant redwoods, the behemoths of the trees, which can reach up to about 400 feet tall? These marvelous trees can live for thousands of years. Do you think the wildfires have not started in these areas in all that time, where all their pine needles have fallen? Yes, they do happen. So why do these trees not burn down? For most pine trees, fires are the keys for them to spread their seeds. Their bark is actually resistant to burning thanks to a high amount of tannin in it, and it being thick. Additionally, their great height also protects the more vulnerable needles from the flames. If you go through a redwood forest, you'll find scars on the sides of the trees, from fires in the past. Yes, these fires will be needed from time to time, and many wildlife management groups will start a fire called a prescribed burn. Yes, there's actually a time where you will intentionally start a fire. These fires will also return nutrients to the soil, and this is the biggest threat when a tree falls. After the land is disturbed by the fire or the loss of a tree, the soil will wash away. It is the roots of the trees which help hold the soil together and prevents the nutrients from running off with rain, floods, or melting snow. This soil will spread down the stream if not stopped. Normally it would be the lichens and grass which will turn after the wildfire. When the tree falls, it leaves rooms for new trees to grow. If you are there, you can plant them. This can allow the path of ecological succession to be shortened. Be careful. Small saplings are the perfect food source for deer, elk, and moose. You'll plant more trees than you'll cut down. I would recommend at least a 3-to-1 ratio, but even then I would still expect some losses. Are fires the only way for trees to spread their seeds? No, of course not. Many use nuts and acorns, which are buried by squirrels and other animals. There is yet even another: flooding. This is most prevalent in trees like the cottonwood. These will use flooding from the spring runoff to spread their seeds about. Currently, this is an issue which humans have caused because they limit the flooding to protect their homes. Again, wildlife management groups have been flooding areas to aid the cottonwood trees. Okay, so that's a lot of information. There's something I touched on earlier that I need to address now. Why the patchwork forest? Fire, flood, and logging. Those are only a few things which can kill trees. Another devastating one is diseases. North American pines are currently being decimated by a parasitic pine beetle. This is why having multiple species of tree in an area is important. Parasites and disease often have difficulty jumping from one species to another, and having multiple species in an area can actually make it harder to wipe out the whole forest in one go. If the tree is diseased, they'll need to be removed to prevent it from spreading. Yes, this is one reason behind logging, in fact. It is called targeted logging, and it's the same as cutting out a tumor to save the body. The second reason behind logging is to create fire barriers to reduce the spreading of wildfires. This can help protect the rest of the forest in case of the wildfire. Diseased trees will need to be burnt, and the ashes can then be spread to nourish the new trees you have planted. But if you're creating a fire barrier, the felled trees will need to be removed altogether. If they are left to rot and return to earth, they will dry out and become a virus themselves. Oh, I'm still not done yet. You see, there is another reason as to why we have the ecological succession in the varied forests. It is on the other side of the ecosystem, the animals. Larger ones like deer and elk will hide in the trees, but they will forage in the grasslands. One for protection, the other for food. Small animals like rabbits and birds do this as well. Some birds only nesting in certain trees or even a part of the tree. And some even only in a certain part of the forest. Each of them is needed to keep the whole ecosystem surviving. Okay, let's turn our attention to the Elven forest. What do we know of them? The elves take refuge in old forests, which can live for centuries. This does sound like our redwood trees we have spoken of earlier, though not all elven forests are pine. Some are deciduous trees, which will lose their leaves in the winter. Currently, on Earth, the tallest are only about 300 feet. Okay, these are a little shorter than the redwoods, but they could do. The trees in elven forests have been shown to be much taller though. This means a much deeper root system, and more disturbing when the tree dies. So what will the elves need to do to protect their forest? First off, they'll need to prevent and use wildfires. This can be done with clear cutting for fire barriers. This will require careful monitoring and preparation. If you want to do a controlled fire, you'll need to do it when there's little wind, else you risk spreading it elsewhere. Also, they'll need to spread the seeds about. So which method they'll use will be determined by which type of trees they have in their forests. Second is they'll need to be vigilant for diseases. They'll need to remove the disease in dead trees regularly, as well as manage the different forest segments. This becomes much more complicated with the forests of the elves. You see, they don't live in just any ordinary forest. No, not even close. Elves tend to live in forests which are strong with magic. And those areas also serve home to many magical beasts that you shall meet in Terra during your adventure. And with any magical beast, you'll need to manage their population and the forest sections accordingly. This is no small feat. No, but the full detail into such population management we will leave for another date. With the long lives of elves, it is easy for them to become complacent. While forests can take centuries to mature, elves, they live much longer. For them to tend to the forest is much the same way as humans would cut their grass. It is too easy for them to say, I'll just do it tomorrow, or next month, or even next year. Yes, this is a danger for those who have lived such long lives. Grant walked around the elven town while the merchant discussed his business with the elves. Apparently, part of his cargo was some sort of fertilizer the elves were fond of. From perched high in a tree, he saw the elves. They worked perfectly. Even a fool could tell that. But thanks to the aid of the foreman, he finally understood what they were working on. The elves were tending their forest as diligently as any farmer did their fields. He shouldn't be surprised. With such long lives comes much experience. Thank you for watching Aspiring Adventures. I know this is a different sort of issue, but just as important to understand the mythical beasts of the world. Please return next time where we should head to the underworld to face the nightmarish Cerberus. If you have any foes looming on your horizon, please post them below and I shall undertake time to research such a beast. Until then, stay safe, Aspiring Adventurers.